Welcome to the Finance Geeks, a podcast about real financial planning. Join us as we get into the nitty-gritty, discussing everything from pensions to portfolios. If you're into numbers, strategies, and running a successful practice, this is your ultimate geeky hangout.
Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 11 of the Finance Geeks podcast. Thanks for joining us. My name is Warren Shute. I'm here joined by
Paul Cleworth.
And today, Paul and I are talking about how we secure our clients' income in retirement. But before we get into that, Paul, what have you been up to?
I've been enjoying the sunny weather, Warren. I don't know about you.
Isn't it?
I'm loving it. I mean, it's a little bit cold in the mornings, but it's the sunny weather is welcome. It's like a breath of fresh air. Love it.
Long overdue.
So it is long overdue. I've been booking in some holidays.
Nice.
I've been booking in some walks in the Brecon Beacons with your good self, and some golf. Some of it with you, some of it with Kevin. So I'm booking that in. I've just finished Yellowstone on Netflix.
Great.
Well, yeah, we finished season 4, and it got, it was. I used to really like it, and now I just think it's okay. There's just too many ridiculous plots that are going on, and I don't know what. Anyway, season 5 is on Paramount Plus, so we're not sure we want to get that because we'd have to subscribe to it. So I've got to find something else to watch. But I have been watching 0 Day with Robert De Niro. That's pretty good. That's sort of like 24, if you like that sort of thing.
Okay.
What else? I'm picking up a camper van later this month. That's all happening. So I'm definitely middle-aged now. So I'm excited about that. They've been phoning me recently and saying, "Oh, we're just making sure do you want to stay over? What time do you want to pick it up?" And what you do is you pick it up and you can decide to stay in the camper van that evening, partly because you can then try it all out and they can, tell you how it all works and then sell you lots of accessories, I'm sure. Yeah, the other thing I've been doing is paying attention to the news. I normally tell all of my clients to sort of ignore the news as much as possible, but we're inundated by it. We're surrounded by it. It's on every, social media post and every tablet and media thing you look at. And I'm sort of utterly staggered by the way events are unfolding. The discussions between world leaders all defy all logic and expectation, and the world feels like a sort of political twilight zone, doesn't it? With Trump and Macron and Zelensky and
news acronym negative events worldwide.
Service.
Service.
Yeah. Negative events world service. It's terrible, isn't it?
I click the headboard. I click the headlines in the evening before I go to bed, but I try my best not to read too much into it. It affects your well-being. But you're right, it is. It's an embarrassing time.
I just before I hand over to you, I want to tell you that last night I decided it was a good idea. At 8:35, I'd read to my youngest boy, Rory, who's 9. It was a lovely little chat that we had. Rory,
yeah, what did you read?
Little chat with him, and we read The Wimpy Kid. Right, of course we did.
Cool.
Reading all of them.
Love.
And it was about 8:35. I went downstairs. I noticed that my wife wasn't downstairs. She was upstairs. She twisted her ankle, so she's in bed. I thought, great, I've got the evening to myself downstairs. Brilliant. What should I do? I'll watch a film. So I put a film on the big screen. We've got this projector, 127-inch screen. I started to watch this film called The Raid, which is a Korean film. It's brilliant. Had a whiskey, had some tortilla chips, right? Got to 11:15, loved it. And then, of course, had a bad night's sleep because I went to bed late and I'd had this whiskey and some, bad snacks and whatever. Anyway, I'm trying to debate: was it worth it over a good night's sleep? And I'm just not sure. I think actually, being 48 now, you've got to get to bed by 9:30.
I'm terrible. I'm like, I like to go up at about 9:30, lights out by 10. That's my kind of thing. But I now.
What have you been up to?
Me, just come back from Barcelona. So had a week out in Barcelona. Had a few days with Ollie playing golf. First day was lovely and glorious and warm. T-shirt weather. It was great. Second day was actually cold, which was really disappointing. I've never played in a whole game virtually in the cold in Spain. Yeah.
How did you get on, by the way? What did you score? Bogey golf or anything?
I played quite well when it was warm. To be fair, I think I went around in sort of 95 or something like that. But when it was cold, I didn't. I think I was over 100 and something. I just sort of.
The tough courses?
Not really, if I'm honest. Not particularly. Quite forgiving. Quite wide fairways. Nothing. There's a few bunkers and things. Not overly tricky.
Was that 95 on the pitch and putt or proper course?
But I did finish it. I didn't throw my teddies out of the pram and not finish any holes. I don't know if you've ever done that, Paul. Have you?
I tell you what I did. I had this old club, and it was a woods are metal, aren't they? But I had an actual wooden driver, and I remember at St Albans, I was playing with my brother, and I was playing with one of his mates, and I hit a terrible drive, and I deliberately snapped the driver over my knee in through it, just for effect. And it was an old driver anyway, but it was quite good. You got to do that sometime, especially if there's a big crowd. You got to deliberately do a slice into the woods and then snap it. Swear, profanities abound.
Oh. So no, golf was good, and then Ollie came back because he went to the rugby. He went to see Ireland, Wales up at Principality, and I stayed out, and Nikki flew out, and I had a couple of days with Nikki in Barcelona, and that was nice. Yeah, Barcelona's a lovely city. Really, really liked it. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so
we've been there before. Might be going to Valencia actually. Never been there, but we might be going there in April.
Nice.
So we're just trying to get someone to mind the dog.
They still do the Grand Prix
in Valencia. Yeah. I don't know.
They used to have a Grand Prix in Valencia. I think it might have moved. I think I was talking to Jackie Lockie, and I think she's really into Formula One. And I think she said it had been moved.
I'll have to ask my son Miles. He's 13. He knows everything about Formula One. Yeah. He's watching as much as he can possibly consume on Netflix about Formula One and Lewis Hamilton.
Oh, really? Well, it's nice to have a passion, isn't it? It's nice to encourage them to get through that sort of stuff. Oh, yeah. So, okay, so moving on to the main body of the news, our main focal point, how we secure our clients' income in retirement. So it's a huge subject and very poignant in respect of it's something that we go through with our clients in most client meetings. Most of our clients are in that transition period or have transitioned into their retirement years. I know a lot of advisors don't like to use the word retirement. We're okay with it. We just use it as it is. But how do you want to play this? Do you want me to start and roll through some of the points that I do? Do you want to sort of start with some of yours?
Why don't you start this time and tell us a bit about how you specifically talk to your clients about securing an income in retirement, what type of incomes there are, and the sort of strategy behind how you do it, because it is a big subject and there's lots of methods, there's lots of ways of drawing down either income or withdrawal of capital from their portfolio. So you start off and I'll chip in.
I think for us, it all starts with a financial plan. So we have to have a strong financial plan and cash flow. So we build the cash flow generally out to age 100. Now I say generally, if a client's particularly young, I'd sort of say, probably we don't have a rule of this, but some sort of say sub 35 or older, and again, no rule, but sort of in their 80s, we would probably go out to 110 or sometimes 120, believe it or not. I remember having a financial plan going to age 100 and I had a 92-year-old, and showing a 92-year-old like an 8-year cash flow forecast was a little bit, you've only got 8 years left. I didn't like that. So although bless her heart, she didn't live many more years, I did extend her cash flow out. So she had another 18 years or so. So it
makes it look good. Yeah,
we kind of kept that. And so having that cash flow and then, testing that cash flow against sort of catastrophe. So if there was a stock market correction, are you still got enough money? Are you going to run out of money? What sort of asset allocation, what equity mix do we need to do to make sure that you can withstand that? And then looking at catastrophes, if one of them were to die in early retirement, what's the effect of that? Can we afford just to buy a single life annuity, for example, or do we need to consider the surviving spouse when doing that? So it starts for me in that vein, and our planning advice meetings are 2 hours, and the first hour and a bit, maybe hour and 20 minutes or so, are all on the values, what's important, their goals, and the cash flow side of it. We then sort of look at the technical side and the asset allocation and such like. But one of the things we would also do is when we put an investment in place, really want to try and make sure there's an ongoing review process in there, so they know whether it's going to be a full-on planning meeting again, maybe in 12 months' time, or whether it's going to be more of a light touch. Okay, look, we put it in this place. Let's check back in when the property's sold and we got some money to reinvest doing that. But it all starts with the cash flow.
I found that there's, especially recently and over the last 6 to 12 months, we've had more and more discussions about withdrawal of income, starting to draw monies from their portfolio, me actively encouraging them to start drawing their monies. And I think doing the numbers and getting some management information, I used to say our average age is 57. I think it's a bit higher than that now. I think it's 58, 59. So being a more mature business, it's perhaps no surprise when you're working with clients with bigger asset levels. They're usually in their 50s and 60s and older. And I think it's something like now. I asked Kevin, my power planner, earlier today, how many. I think it's 25% of all the clients we work with are now in the accumulation. They're at the point when, again, you can say this word retire, but they're actually accessing their monies. They're drawing something from their portfolios, and I think a lot of our listeners will know about the sort of safe max rule, the 4% 4% rule, whether it's a rule or not, but it is a typical amount that we tend to draw out. And rather as a starting point, if they happen to have £1 million of assets, whether it's ISA, cash, GI, or pension, the obvious thing is saying to them that might sustain or should theoretically sustain 4%, 40 grand a year on $1 million. But I'm sure you find as well that you're constantly factoring in all their other income sources, from part-time work to defined benefit pensions that have either kicked in already or that will at 60 or 65, actually state pension, rental income, and some of our clients like yours will still actually be doing a bit of work. So although that they're in their next, the second phase, third phase of their life, whatever it is, at the point when they're drawing benefits, we're now working with the client to produce the plan to say, you can actually draw this much.
Yeah.
This is, and giving them permission to spend their money and then creating a plan. So as you develop it, I'm going to explain how we actually sort of marshal their assets to be able to draw monies out. Because we keep calling it income, but it's mostly withdrawal of capital.
Yeah, sure. No, you're absolutely right. Completely right. We do a similar thing with regards to 4%. We're probably a little bit more generous. We probably go to 5% on income withdrawals. And that's principally on the basis that the 4% rule, I believe, was put together on a 50-50 portfolio, lasting 30 years, indexing every year. Most of our clients, believe it or not, don't index their income every year. So we're happy to go to 5%. If they're particularly cautious, we might not. But we'd also ask them not to increase their income in a year when the markets have been negative in the previous 12 months. So there's kind of sort of protection measures there. We tend to find that the clients will potentially draw a bit more pre-state retirement age. And for whatever reason, state retirement age, state pensions kick in, they might sort of let go of the level of income and just pull it back a little bit.
Yeah, it makes quite a big difference, really. If your client's drawing, let's say, for argument's sake, 5,000 a month is what they need net income, so 60,000 a year. You could argue that they need a pot of 1.25 million as a starting point, or more or less, or whatever percentage you're going to use. But if, as part of that 5,000 a month, they're age 60, and at 66 or 67, they're going to get essentially £1,000 a month each from state pension. That's 3,000. Like yourself, I've been intentionally encouraging clients of mine to become financially independent earlier than perhaps they thought they were going to be at 65 or whatever, taking it earlier, intentionally drawing a higher income, knowing that when their state pensions kick in or other forms of income, we can then reduce it. There's a perception, I think, still with clients that you de-risk and move into bonds or cash prior to taking benefits. It's the 25, 30 years ago, people would do that when they were going to buy an annuity with their income and specifically de-risk to not jeopardize the value of the pot. But I don't know about you, but I think I've got less than 1% of all clients I work with are actually drawing annuities. I think that might change now that interest rates are a bit better, but 99% of them are just income drawdown.
Yeah, we quote annuities for everyone who goes into a drawdown so they can see what the annuity.
You have to, don't you? You're supposed to do that, and you have to say, this is what an annuity will provide as well. And it's part of the compliance process to say annuity versus drawdown.
Yeah, so we quote it. I think if they're a single individual, I can understand their drivers behind it and stuff. But most couples, and particularly those with children, like the thought of actually passing something down to the next generation. And the flexibility that drawdown affords you of varying your income. We kind of work it a different way. We kind of like pay out the level of income the client requires. We'll certainly highlight to them if we think they're being a bit too aggressive on the drawdown. But if their expenditure needs are 5,000 a month, for example, we'll pay them the 5,000, but we wouldn't pay them 6, even if they could afford 6. But we would say to them that you got this stuff in the bag. This isn't the bank here. If you need anything, if you want anything, just let us know. We can make single payments to you. But we don't want money just building up in their cash account. And sometimes we've found with clients that if we pay them too much money, there's an element of overwhelm. It's like, well, what do I do with this money? And not necessarily for today's discussion, but there's the psychology around giving them permission to spend money. That's. I'm sure you're exactly the same. Spend a lot of time with clients, giving them that permission.
Yeah, and it becomes very relative to what they were on previously. I think that it's perhaps seen in the wrong light, where people have a portfolio of money and say, what will it provide me as an income? And from a client's point of view, I don't know how. It's hard to understand what they think. I mean, we can ask them, but you could ask lots of them. Do they think that it just generates a certain level of income and I'll draw that? Or do they appreciate the fact that we're actually selling down assets to pay them mostly withdrawal of capital, an amount from their portfolio? And, I find that the discussion's got to be about their requirements for their living costs. What you always say this, what are your expenses? What do you actually need to live on? So if you establish the budget first and the cash flow and you do it the right way round, you can then sort of say, okay, we've looked at what your outgoings are, and we can see that your living requirements are, $3,000, $4,000, $10,000 a month. This is what your portfolio will provide. And if you've done your job properly over the years, you'll be on track, to have sufficient pot of money and a strategy to be able to work towards a point in the future where you can secure that income and draw it. But we should talk about this idea of securing the income.
Yeah.
Because we've got at Tandem a very specific way that we do that. So when it comes to actually saying this income, this money that we're paying you is secure, how do you do it? What does that mean to you, and how would you relate that to your clients?
Okay, so we wouldn't use the word securing the income. We would just use the word income. The way we set up a drawdown contract, or even whether I say drawdown, it doesn't mean a personal pension drawdown. It just means drawdown from an investment portfolio. We would secure the income for 18 months in cash. So we would put 18. We'd have 18 months of their income requirements in cash. We'd then hold a further 3.5 years in short-term bonds. We generally use the Vanguard Global Short-Term Bond Fund. So they know they've got 5 years, 60 months of their income requirements in relatively low risk, low volatility, low growth investments.
So you're not selling the equities with yourself. You're just leaving the equity-based funds?
Yeah, and then the balance of the portfolio generally is an 100% equity portfolio. So we basically have one portfolio, 100% equity, and then we hold in cash and bonds, 18 months and 3.5 years in cash or short-term bonds. And obviously during the year, they draw down the years of income. The reason we hold 18 months, not 12 months, is because clients never come in on the 12th anniversary of their meeting. We need a bit of flex there. If they're, okay, I'm on holiday, I'll see you in 3 months' time. We want to make sure there's enough cash there to pay them. And we're not having to sell anything. If when we meet with them, the equity markets have been positive in the previous 12 months, we will then sell the equities to replace the cash that they've spent.
And that's the tricky thing that I don't get, if doing it your way, that you've got to then time it so that you're specifically selling down the equity-based fund to top up the cash. When do you do that? After year one, after year two?
Well, I just explained. So when we meet with
only when it does well.
No. Let me explain. Let me finish it off and I'll tell you. So when we meet with them, they've spent the first year, they've spent the cash, they've met with them, the equity markets have been positive. We sell a year's worth of equities at that point and we replenish the cash. Second scenario is the equities have been negative. If the equities have been negative, we won't sell the equities. We'll sell a year's worth of bonds and replenish the cash. And that goes on that way. So if the following year the equities have been negative, we'll sell a second year of bonds and replenish the cash. We'll leave it. So allow the equities to recover. So basically, we're only selling the equities in a growing bull market. Generally speaking, when this happens, it's only ever 1 year. Very, very, very rare is it back to back. You have 2 consecutive years when the equities are negative.
It's unusual, isn't it?
And you've got the bulk of your money. You've got 75 to 80% of your money, if they're doing a 5% drawdown or a 4% drawdown, 75 or 80% of their money in equities growing. And yeah, it works well. Works really well for the clients.
It's not talked about enough, I don't think. I've been to lots of conferences and seminars, and there's not many advisors will talk about this specifically, how they draw and how they set up the withdrawal strategy for the client. I can understand the way that you do it, and it makes a lot of sense now they've explained it. We just happen to do it differently. So instead of sort of saying, here's 12 months income and giving it to the client, instead, I like the clients to have about 1 to 3 years worth of their total investment portfolio in cash.
Okay.
So 10 to 15% usually of their total investment portfolio in cash. If they have £1 million invested with us, it's not unusual for them to have 150,000 in cash that they manage. And I'll give them advice on which portfolio, whether that's premium bonds or whether it's the best paying cash interest account like a Marcus account or something that I'm quite fond of. If the client then says, right, I'd like to take 40 grand a year from this portfolio of $1 million, we'll generally sell down 6 or 12 months worth of cash from the various pots, whether it's GIA, ISA, pension, and we'll factor in if they've got any of the other forms of income, of course, and if they've got bond income, we might take the full 5% withdrawal from it. But essentially, I'll ask, and I've been doing more 12 months because we've had a good run in equities. I've been selling down 12 months of cash. We then ring fence that cash, whether it's usually in the GIA, the ISA, or the pension. It'll stay in all these different pots, and together we'll work out how much they need from each one, and we'll specifically set up a standing order from Transact to their account.
Yep.
And we don't take a fee on that cash. If they're holding money for 6 or 12 months, it's one of our USPs. We just don't happen to take any ongoing fee on that cash, because we could just say, here's all the money.
Yeah.
Here's all of it for the year. The issue with giving it all to them is if your client is not great with money, they spend it quicker than the 12-month or 6-month period, and then they're coming back to ask for more.
Yeah.
So it's that regularity I want to set up, to set a monthly standing order to them. So if they're getting income coming in as if it was a salary, and they happen to have a separate cash pot for holidays, for capital expenses, I like to separate capital requirements from income to spending day to day.
So the income is roughly 10 to 15% of their invested portfolio with you. Yeah.
The cash that they'll hold for their 3 to 5 year capital expenses, whether it's holidays, cars, whatever, they hold that in cash. We'll then hold 6 to 12 months of their income that they require in cash on the portfolio, and we'll still sell down proportionately across the model portfolio that they're in. So if they're in a 60-40 or an 80-20 or whatever, we'll sell down proportionately across the portfolio so that they retain the same asset allocation, as opposed to selling down the bonds first and leaving the equities. I understand why you do what you do, and I can see that system can work, but we just happen to, not everybody is in a 70-30 model.
Yeah.
It is the most popular model,
Yeah.
but those that are in a lower risk model or even 100% equities, we'd still generally sell down, 6 to 12 months.
Hey, and it works very well, and there's different ways to skin a cat, isn't it? I think that's the key sort of takeaway. there is, and that's the key takeaway. People listen and think, I do it differently back home, and you've got to say there's different ways of doing it. I think what's right is that it's communicated to the client clearly, and the client's happy with what's under. And I think also that there's a strategy, a methodology that you follow, and there's some rationale behind it that you're doing it. Interesting. You're absolutely right about setting up the standing order. So we have the regular payments going from Transact, etc., and the accessing of the accounts. We generally access the general account before we access the ISA and stuff. But if it's going to trigger higher rate capital gains, then we might mix in a bit of ISA money and stuff like that. But when it comes to bond, that's an interesting one. When it comes to bonds, we try not to touch the bonds because a lot of our clients have IHT issues, so we try and then use that for assignment into trust or something. But when we do access the bonds, we rarely take 5% withdrawals. Our most common way is full encashment. So taking a segment off and just fully encash it that way.
It's the clients that have got the bonds. We're talking offshore investment bond here, where they've got it in a trust, like a discretionary discounted gift trust. When that's the case, we've often set it up with a 5% withdrawal, so it has to come out to them.
Sure.
And like yourself, we'll take the advisor fee instead of from the bond, which counts towards the income. We'll take it from a separate GIA if they've got it, which we'd want them to have, so it's not impacting upon that income withdrawal. I mean, I think that the use of offshore bonds is for your client that's already maxed out ISAs, pensions, GIA. So it tends to be, I think, about 7% of all the monies we manage is in an offshore bond. I totally agree that if you're selling down assets to provide an income or a capital withdrawal for clients, you generally use the order of GIA, ISA, then pension.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty standard. But one of the things you just hit the nail on the head with then is every situation is unique, and you've got to factor in so many things. Not just other forms of income that the client has that we mentioned there, like DB schemes or retirement income or whatever. You've got to look at their age, their requirement for income, their health and longevity, their risk profile that they're in, and you do get bizarre scenarios where clients have got more money than they need, and you're encouraging them to take more out, intentionally taking out 7-8% a year if need be, to spend their money sooner than later.
Yeah.
So each situation is quite unique, and I think this is where the advisor comes into their own by demonstrating that this can be done, and then just making it easy for the client to say, follow these rules.
Yeah.
We'll then, when I say secure the income, when I'd said we ring fence 6 months or 12 months in cash, we can't guarantee the growth of their portfolio. No. But if the money's sitting in cash, we can make sure for the next 6 to 12 months that they get a deposit into their bank account from Transact on that day.
Yeah.
And then they don't really need to look at it for 6 to 12 months at all, because they know it's coming in.
Yeah. It's interesting about the income withdrawal rate and how much they can spend. One of the things we do, we're very lucky with Truth, Presswood. It allows you to run scenarios on it quite easily. So we'll do the cash flow. They've told us their expenses and put all that in. We show them, and then quite often they have more money than they have able to spend, and then we'll run them a scenario with what we refer to as die with zero. So how much more can you spend? And we generally go to £100,000 at age 80. It varies on the individual, but generally speaking, £100,000 at age 80. How much more can you spend? And they're like, wow. Okay, so I'm like, okay, look, go off and do everything you want to do. This is you told me what your income you need, how much you want to spend. We're going to set that up from Transact. But just have in the back of your mind that you can spend an extra 20, 30, 40, sometimes £50,000 a year, sometimes more, and still never run out of money. Never go below £100,000 of investable money. So if there's something you really want to do, we encourage like the family holiday stuff, go and do it, go and enjoy these things. And it's nice for them to have that in the back of their mind that they can go and do it. So
I love what you said there, because one of the best things you can do for your client is to reassure them and to help them spend their money, but also to make sure that they understand that it's not going to run out. I think retirement's not just about having a pot of money. It's about ensuring a sustainable, tax-efficient income that lasts a lifetime. And because you do get quite a few clients now that are in their 60s and 50s and 60s that happen to have defined benefit pensions, they already have a fairly guaranteed index form of income. If they've also got a pot of money, we're saying, let's project this out over the next 20, 30 years. These other incomes are going to go up, state pension, defined benefit, and let's make sure that we draw your income out and utilize it in the, for your lifestyle requirements. And it's weird because you can't encourage them to spend more than they're comfortable with.
No.
And I've come a cropper with that before and said, oh, you should go on these holidays and you should do this. Yeah. But they don't want to. No. So you can't make them spend it. I also want to make the point that there's lots of misconceptions about how the maths works and how the tax works. And there's assumptions, for example, that clients think that I've come across where they think that they need to have, if they're earning £100,000 PAYE now, that they need that in retirement. I'm like, well, it's not the same because the tax is completely different. Most of the withdrawal of capital, there's not much tax at all. There's no national insurance on withdrawal from pensions. There's all the tax-free elements. Yeah, so there's that discussion on what you actually need. And then also I had a client email me today and he said, I've got a pension of £750,000. I think it'll grow by 50,000 a year. Therefore, in his head, he thought 50,000 a year is what I can take from the pension. And I was like, well, it would be brilliant if it worked that way, that you could guarantee the return, let it grow first, then take the income, and it would always stay the same value. Whereas there's you've got to factor in sequencing risk and growth and the allocation to cash and so forth. So
100%. What's interesting about the projected expenditure in the future is we profile the spending items. So we recognize that, for example, particularly for office workers, their wardrobe spend might be higher now up until retirement, but when they get to retirement, it might drop down. They might not have to buy the suits and such that sort of stuff. Their eating out and their holidays might be higher during the earlier years of retirement than they will be later. We profile it down. We generally have trigger ages at 75 and 85. But we also go as far as sort of thinking of expenses that they may not have thought about. And I try and include my own personal experiences with this. So at the moment, we include an allocation for personal help around the home in later life, whether that's 75, 85.
That's sensible.
Yeah, help gardening, help around the house, decorating, that kind of thing. But if I'm honest, I think there's also an argument for help within the house, personal care. My parents now get into a stage where they need help in the house, someone coming in, doing things around the house, that kind of thing. And I think really having some kind of care plan in place for your clients for later life. So what would your wishes be? What would your outcome like to be? And how should we cost that sort of expenditure? So spending that.
You're really digging deep there. That's amazing. I didn't know you would go into that level of detail. I think for a client for anyone who's listening to this that's thinking, what are my outgoings going to be in the future? You can definitely do that yourself or with an advisor when you say, well, at the moment, I've got my mortgage, my contributions into my ISA, my pension, I've got my life insurance, I've got all these things. What will it likely be? There's no mortgage cost. I've paid off my that mortgage. My children have left. They're financially independent when I get to 65, potentially. And some things go up, like holiday costs, and some things go down, like you're no longer paying into ISAs and pensions. You're taking it out. So it's quite a different expenditure requirement. But that's really interesting about adding in, as you said, really thinking it through. What would my gardeners, cleaners, what would these extra things be? Maybe you substitute holiday costs when you get older into your 80s and you can't go on holidays. You work for things like care around the house.
But
substitute one for the
and
other.
that's my view. You're less likely to go on holiday. And then I had clients the other way. No. We'll just cruise more. We just want to. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And this is the thing, isn't it? And I have this thing that, spend the money on what brings you most happiness. And for every client, it's different, whether it's their family, holidays, or whatever. But yeah, you're right. It's tricky. It's great, and that's what makes our job interesting, I think, because not every one client is identical. You have these guide rails, these parameters that you work with to help the conversation get going. So you're not starting from the scratch on every conversation, boring all your clients. But equally, you want to make sure it's bespoke and unique to that individual client. Two things that we do often is if a client's retiring before their defined benefit scheme age, let's say retiring in their 60s and it's the 65 year, we'll look at taking early retirement from the scheme and we'll look at the break-even age. So we'll say, okay, look, if you don't take benefits, this is your total payout from the scheme until 88, 89, whatever year they want to go to. But if you take the benefits early and suffer the early retirement penalty, this is the payout. And it's surprising how the client can actually be better off by taking the scheme early and enjoying that money in their early retirement, albeit at a lower rate, because they get it for like 5 years extra. So that's quite an interesting thing that we do.
Yeah, definitely.
And
my son's come bombing up the stairs, not realizing that we're in a podcast here.
Yeah.
And it's a live podcast with Warren. Yeah. Did you have a nice day at school? Yeah, very good. Just have a look after Nelson. Everyone in the office has decided to be as noisy as possible, considering we're on the podcast. Yeah, that's being filmed.
And then
maybe we could go on, carry on.
That's okay. And then we talk about property and such, like buy to lets and things. One of the things we try to do is say, do you really want to have that job in your retirement years? So simplifying your affairs, and not
managing the property.
Yeah, so often try and get clients to exit rental properties and such like in thear early years of retirement. So it simplifies things. Also, you can't spend the bricks and mortar, can you? When you want to spend the money, you're only spending the rental profit on it. So really getting access to the value. So it does two things. It simplifies their affairs, but also gives them access to the capital value to enjoy that money. Doesn't work with all clients. I've got one client who has a holiday home. She must be in her 80s and she loves running it. And that's her job. It keeps her fit and active and healthy. And, she enjoys doing the Airbnb bookings and seeing new visitors stuff. That's fine. But it's a general principle. That's one of the things we would look at as well.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that between 60 and 75, maybe if you've already got rental properties, holiday homes, you could continue those, but generally later on, they're very tax inefficient and they take their hassle. We both know that. So one of the things that I think that's important to talk about that's not talked about enough is the sequence of returns risk. Yep. And so I think that I could do more on this. We've got documents that we've shown clients previously and examples where markets you show them the portfolio value, and then you show them an Excel spreadsheet that says for the next 2 years, you may have negative returns in your portfolio. How would the impact of that affect you withdrawing monies from your portfolio? And building in, as you sort of talked about, alluded to earlier, some form of security of having lower risk assets, whether bonds or cash or whatever, or premium bonds elsewhere, if that's the case. Because mathematically, drawing too much during a downturn, it can significantly reduce the longevity of the assets, can't it?
Massively, yeah, massively. And I think, if you're a financial planner listening to this, being aware of sequencing risk and actually paying attention and bringing it into your client meetings is very, very important. Not just having it on the periphery, because like Paul said, if your portfolio goes down 10%, or let's say 20% in the first year, and you're drawing 5% out, that's 25% down. If it then falls again in the second year and you're taking 5% out, you're really eroding into the capital, and it takes so much more to get back up to 100% again. You're really going to affect that drawdown. So the way we would manage that is by having the segmented pots, just very similar to what you've done. Having your cash and bonds to pay. Arguably 5 years is too long. There's not really been many 2 consecutive years of negative returns, but I think in fairness for us, it just gives that element of security, that buffer, and then allowing the equity to. So that's how we manage sequencing risk.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I'm thinking about what you've said there as well about the security of it. If you're 25, 30 years ago, and annuity interest rates are high and annuity rates, well, maybe it's long ago than that now. When annuity rates are high, you could imagine, if you're a layman, that investing a lot of money into an annuity that gives you secure income is just the way forward. It's just the thing to do. And I personally don't use a lot of. I'm not very au fait with flexible annuities or third way annuities or anything like that. The drawdown option of continuously investing money, is drawing it as required, having the cash buffer and so forth, I think works a lot better for us, because the clients have got the options of how much they draw and when, passing it on during their lifetime and after their death, all of that. But we're getting another complication coming in, aren't we, in April 2027? I don't know if you've been having lots of these discussions with clients recently about the big pot, the pensions. Suddenly it's going to, in April 27, going to form part of the estate, and what you do, and whether the client spends more, draws more of their income up to the high rate band or even into it to spend it now, rather than incurring both IHT and income tax on their beneficiaries in the future. You're finding that's more of a discussion now?
100%, yeah. Not so much right now, but straight after the budget, end of last year, definitely we're doing it. It's potentially going to form part of the estate. They've not come out with the rules yet. The consultation ended, but we're waiting. For us, we're just waiting for the rules to come through. Once we know the rules, we know the game we're playing, and then we can plan accordingly. We've already got strategies in place that we might how to deal with it. But you're absolutely right. It's not going to really make sense to leave a pot of money that's income taxable and inheritance taxable as the last port of call, particularly for those clients who are unlikely to draw on their pension at all. We have several clients who are unlikely to ever spend their pension. They've got defined benefits and such like, and therefore that was going to be a nice nest egg. But I can see in that instance, I think we should do a whole show on that once the rules come out, the use of trust and whole of life policies and such like being used to protect it. But on the pension, drawing money from pensions, we typically would favour drawing down as a phased drawdown. So taking a bit of income, bit of tax-free cash as each payment. A lot of our clients have capital already, so we don't really see the benefit of taking a chunk of tax-free cash and just pop it in the estate. We're still working on the basis that the pension's outside of the estate. So a phased approach, taking a bit of tax-free cash, bit of income works nicely.
I do the same. It's unusual, now to take the entire tax-free cash element out of the pension. If it's a large pension, let's say it's £1 million, and obviously you can take 250 out generally, 25%. Client takes it out. What are they going to do with it? If they've got a reason to spend that money, pay off a mortgage or gift it to kids, okay, fine. But we would still crystallize a bit at a time.
Yeah.
And the client might need, as we established before, £1 million, 40,000 a year, 4%. And if they don't have ISA or GIA, we might start to only draw the tax-free cash. We might draw 12,570 from the taxable part of the pension if they're able to use their personal allowance, and then maybe top it up with the tax-free cash element, and then just reassess. And all of these things we're talking about, whether it's the order of approach, the percentage withdrawal, the bucketing approach, sequencing risk, and the tax planning part of it, it just demands really at least an annual review. But we find that there's throughout the year there's usually a 6-month touch point as well. If we're selling down 6 months worth of income, where you just need to speak to your client, and I like to get it done, get it agreed, and then put it in motion to say, right, we've agreed it now. Don't call me for another 6 months.
Well,
Generally,
well, that,
because you go off and live your
yeah.
life and enjoy it. The rest is sorted. We've done it now.
Yeah, and in fairness, that's why we do 18 months. So 18 months covers a year. We don't have to touch base with them once a year. And if they want extra money, they just email in, and we can just get the money drawn down and stuff like that. It's nice. But how do you feel? I think we've done securing your income. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure we raised?
No, I think so. We touched on other sources of income there, rental income, and then income from investment portfolios. You've got to factor in any investment income that the client has as well. I think that there's it's a harder job than perhaps a lot of our listeners, if they're not advisors, realize to get the tax perfect.
Yeah,
because unless the client tells you specifically what level of income that they're going to receive this year.
yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. I've just had an email to a client today. We're in March, the end of the tax year, pretty much, and we're trying to work out the optimal amount of money to draw from the taxable part of his pension to use his basic rate tax band. And of course, the client might tell you, "Oh, I've got last." He told me what it was last year.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, "Okay, well, what is it this year?" And you don't know what it is because the year's not finished. So we've got the different forms of income. Obviously, he's got, in this case, state pension because he's over state pension age, DB pension, and rental income. But he's forgotten to tell me any investment income that he's got. So, of course, with the best will in the world, you try to get it exactly right and use all the allowances. And then you'll find that after that tax year's end, you can't go back and undo it. And the client said, "Oh, I forgot about that £4,000 interest I received in my cash pot. Now we're in higher rate tax band." So, it happens. But yeah, I think we've talked about our strategies for securing an income for the client. It's multifaceted, it's complicated, and it just requires the sort of personal touch to get it right for the client, doesn't it?
Yeah. And if you listen to this, whether in the UK or overseas, and you think, okay, I've got a different approach, please message us. It'd be great to hear your approach, what you do. And if you want us to, give you a shout out, and we'll even explain what your approach is online if you would like us to do that. So, Paul, shall we move on to our Q&A session?
Yes, that's right. Now, let's do that. Warren, I've got a couple of quotes here that are relevant to the topic today. And I was going to include an anecdote or antidote, as you say normally, but to give one in this regard about securing an income retirement, it would be such a long-winded example that I couldn't think of one that would be easy and quick, to be honest. What I will do is just tell you a couple of my quotes, and then I'll hand over to you. Is that all right?
Sure. Yeah, far away.
So my first one is from Epictetus, the sort of famous theologian, Stoic philosopher.
That's the one. Yeah, I know him.
And it's to do with retirement. So wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants.
I like that. Yeah.
You may have heard that before.
Yeah.
I don't know about any clients of yours that have got lots of assets, lots of monies, and they sort of covet things. And the reality is, it's a mindset, isn't it? It's like, decide how much you need, how much do you want,
completely,
and just have less of those wants, and you can be happier. You don't need as much money.
100%.
Okay, so I've got another one from Warren Buffett. We all know him. Someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago.
Yeah, I like that.
I thought that was to do with retirement.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Our sitting in the shade is a nice thing, actually. It's exactly what my wife likes to do. She doesn't like to be in the sun. I like it sunny, but don't want to sit in the sun.
I'm with that. We make the same.
Read a book in the shade. And my last one from Earl Nightingale. This chap was an American radio speaker, author, and dealing with the subjects of human character development. Anyway, I think he's passed away now. He said, "As in all successful ventures, the foundation of a good retirement is planning."
Yeah.
Which we all agree with, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, completely, 100%. It's. I'm just going to share one quote. I've got two, but I'll just share one quote. And retirement is when you stop living at work and start working at living. And that's actually an unknown quote, but I quite like that.
That's exactly what you need to do. You be, the general you needs to do.
Yeah.
And switch. It's that pivot, isn't it? From saying, right, I've had enough now. I've had enough work. I'm going to really get my teeth into living my best life and enjoy it and feel like I deserve it, and just not overthink it and be worried about it. So I think that I've done a good job if the client's happy in retirement with the amount that they're receiving, living a good life, and just not bothering me too often.
So, but, I give you a story about a client who I met this week. He came in to see us. He's just coming into retirement, and he was all set with just buying all the retirement benefits from his existing employers. He had several different schemes. And when we just spoke through about his priorities and what was important to him, we gathered the information together and we produced the cash flow. He was like blown away at the possibility of using drawdown as a retirement source, and the flexibility behind it. He just didn't understand. He's a smart guy. He just didn't understand or know that it was available to him, that it would be able to be done. And the time really with him was more around the case of, hey, what next? What does this next chapter of your life bring? You've got this money available to you. You've got more money you can pull down if you need it. But it was just enabling him that space between work and retirement to say, okay, I'm going to be okay. It's almost like taking a magic trip out into the future and saying, look, financially, I'm now 85, but in the future, it's all been okay. And just giving them that security. And I think the cash flow does that for the clients. And I think that's one thing. Doing this on your own is very, very, very difficult to do. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult to do, particularly if you don't have the skill set. And for the wife, who was very happy to carry on working, just showing her that she could afford to retire today and not work again. And she's like, it's just given her the permission to, okay, I'm now working through choice rather than through necessity. And you could see her walk away lighter. And that to us is something that we would do most days. It's a common thing, but for the client, it's a unique experience. And I shared with Christian, I said, you mustn't take that for granted. Giving the clients that confidence, that reassurance that you're going to be okay financially and you can retire if you want to and you're working through choice is a gift. And I think that's why I love this job as much today as I did on the first day. So, yeah.
Well, that's a great anecdote, Warren. I've got to give you a round of applause. That was inspirational.
I told you today.
It was good. Isn't it amazing how the perception of what the choices are? Clients got these pensions, all different providers. They get a letter. It says this is the annuity you could buy. They don't realize they can take the open market option. They can transfer it to do drawdown. And some providers don't offer it. Yeah. And a lot of occupational money purchase schemes, they just say, look, this is the income you're going to get. And the client thinks that's it.
Yeah, no.
So is that a wrap then?
That's a wrap. That's a wrap for today. Thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful having you on our show. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to the show. And that's it for me. Thanks very much. Paul?
Thanks, guys. Yeah, see you next time. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Finance Geeks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. Drop your comments and questions on YouTube, and be sure to follow us on social media. Join us next time for more insights to boost your financial planning game.